Good evening, good day, good morning. I know of some people who have joined this webinar at 5 a.m. Thank you so much. I am Cesar De Mello, who convenes Pax Christi Asia Pacific. But before anything else, please stay tuned for a welcome message from Bishop Colin Bagaforo from the Philippines. Bishop Colin is co-president of Pax Christi International. He would very much have liked to have been with us tonight, but he had an occasion that he could not avoid with his fellow bishops in the Philippines. Hence, this message from Bishop Colin.
Distinguished guests, dear friends in the peace movement, brothers and sisters in faith, peace be with you. As co-president of Pax Christi International, it is my great joy to welcome you to this symposium on Magnifica Humanitas, the greatness and dignity of our common humanity. We gathered at a time when our world is wounded by war, inequality, polarization, and the growing use of technology in ways that can threaten human life. In this context, Magnifica Humanitas reminds us that every human person possesses a sacred dignity, and that peace begins by recognizing and protecting that dignity. Allow me to highlight three challenges. First, let us reject the normalization of war. War must never become ordinary or inevitable. Artificial intelligence, autonomous weapons, and other technologies must serve humanity and protect life, not make destruction easier or remove moral responsibility. Second, we need the disarmament of words. Words can build bridges or deepen divisions. In a world filled with hatred, misinformation, and polarization, we must choose words that promote truth, respect, dialogue, and fraternity. Third, let us always see the world from the perspective of victims. Peace is not an abstract idea. It has a human face, the face of the child displaced by war, the family who has lost a loved one, the poor and the vulnerable, whose voices are often unheard. Dear friends, Pax Christi believes that peace is possible, but peace requires courage, justice, dialogue, and solidarity. May this symposium renew our commitment to building a world where human dignity is respected, violence is rejected, and the greatness of our sacred humanity, Magnifica Humanitas, truly shines. Thank you, and may the God of peace bless us all.
I'm sorry for the few glitches through the tape. It worked very well when it was sent to us. We now follow with what we in Australia called Welcome to Country. I would like to acknowledge the First Nations people, the traditional custodians for over 60,000 years of the land of Australia on which some of us are gathering. We recognize and respect their enduring relationships with their lands and waters, sovereignty over which has not been ceded. I also acknowledge the lands and cultures from which some of you are joining as well. I pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging among all First Nations. Thank you. Before we proceed, I would like to draw your attention to a few matters. All will be muted except the panel. Each speaker is allotted 7 minutes for the presentation. Q&A discussion will follow after all presentations. Please place your questions in the question box. To retrieve the question box at the bottom of your screen, you have those 3 dots. If you click on those 3 dots, you will see the Q&A button there. And please put your questions there. Make your questions not too long, please, so that it'll be easier to read and respond. Thank you. Pope Leo XIV signed off on Magnifica Humanitas on May 15, 2026, 135 years after Pope Leo XIII's Rerum Novarum. Its concerns of an industrial revolution, technology, and human labor are revisited by Pope Leo in this encyclical, but in the context of the 21st century. Just as Pope Francis's Laudato Si was not a climate change encyclical, though climate was a trigger, Magnifica Humanitas, though about AI, at a deeper level, is about the human person and safeguarding humanity through a civilization of love. This is an encapsulation previously used by Pope Paul VI in 1970. Civilization of love describes a social order wherein charity, in the classic meaning of love, and justice become the organizing principles of economic, political, social, and cultural life. Our presenters will approach this from different angles. Having said this, I now invite Father Cedric Prakash to address the prophetic call for a civilization of love, to choose peace, justice, and dialogue in Asia. An Indian Jesuit, Cedric has been long involved as human rights advocate, reconciliation trainer, and peace activist in India and other countries. As a visiting lecturer and speaker, he has been at the forefront of issues concerning the poor, the marginalized, minorities, the excluded, and the exploited. He founded Prashant, a Center for Human Rights, Justice, and Peace, on October the 2nd, 2001, the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Over to you, Cedric.
Thank you very much, Cesar de Mello. Thank you very much, Pax Christi, International Pax Christi, Asia Pacific. Thank you also to all the participants, attendees here, and very especially to my co-panelists, Sister Susan and Reverend James. It's good to be here. And I've been given to speak about the prophetic call of a civilization of love to choose peace, justice, and dialogue. This is about Asia Pacific. And this is not only about Asia Pacific, it is about my country, India. It is about the rest of the world. When on the 15th of May, 2026, Pope Francis signed this is first and path-breaking encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas, he was ushering definitely a revolution, which years ago, his namesake, Pope Leo XIII, kind of undertook during the Industrial Revolution through Rerum Novarum. There are several things that Pope Leo XIV says in this powerful encyclical, Magnifica Humanitas. And I think in this extremely brief time of 7 minutes to encapsulate even some of the key points will be, for any human, impossible. I'm going to highlight a few points in the context of this civilization of love, which he so strongly speaks about in his last chapter, the 5th and concluding chapter, in which he says, we are all called to build the civilization of love. He gets into the civilization of love, trying to address the culture of power that is dominating us, that is trying to destroy us, to create discrimination, division, denigration, demonization. The culture of power, those who sit on the chair, those who decide who we are, what we do, what we eat, what we see, what we read. Yesterday, the church in India observed Justice Sunday. It is on the 15th of August every year. We have our Independence Day. We got independence in 1947, and it is the 80th Independence Day. We have completed 79 years of independence. And the theme which the church gave us for Justice Sunday 2026 is from Isaiah 1, chapter 17, justice begins with you, with me. And that whole chapter 1 of Isaiah is very, very strong. It's basically the Lord is accompanying us and he wants us to respond to the cries of the poor, the oppressed, the widow, the orphan, whatever. And he also says that he has put down the powerful from their thrones and exalted the lowly, which in a way is reflected in the Magnificat, and Pope Francis ends Magnifica Humanitas challenging us through the Magnificat to be like Mary, weavers of hope. What does he address? He addressed what is happening in the world today. He says there is a normalization of war. We see so many wars and bloodshed everywhere. Here in India, say, the tribals who are mainly Christians in Manipur who are suffering. We have minorities, both Christians and Muslims, who are demonized. We have, it all depends where you put, say, Palestine, Gaza, as part of Asia or part of the Far East or the Middle East, whatever. But in a way, we are in the same area. The people of Gaza or Palestine have been suffering for a long time now, without identity, without their homeland. Then there is the logic, he says, of the strongest, those who have power, those who wield authority, those who decide. I will do this today, but I will change my tune tomorrow. because it is my power that counts. I will say this today and I will say something else tomorrow. And we live in these contradictions of some of the most powerful people in this world, even of Asia. We have strong men living who are controlling our destinies in India and other parts of the world, of Asia and the Pacific. And I think we need to see their rhetoric, the way they wield the authoritarian streak. He speaks about economic interests, like the whole weaponization of things, the industrial military complex, the military industrial complex, what has been condemned regularly, even by a man like Eisenhower years ago, and how they decide that war should continue. Pope Leo addresses all this. But he says, in the context of all this, we need to build this civilization of love. We can do it very concretely, he says, through justice, fraternity, and through the universal, say, common good. And he provides a dynamic, he provides a roadmap, he gives us a direction. And he says, we need to disarm words, we need to build justice. We need to listen to the victims of injustice, of hate, of violence. We have to have a balanced realism, okay? And to address cynicism and so on that is taking place. And ultimately, we need dialogue. Today, we live in a world when the powers that are telling us what to do. They are defining our identity. In India, hundreds and thousands of people have been disenfranchised. These are people who have been born and brought up in India. They have been living for years. But now, just because they don't vote for a ruling regime, they're just struck out of the electoral rolls. They have to prove that their grandfathers or grandmothers existed. It is something, we have reached a ridiculous level of authoritarianism, of culture of power, which we need to address. The challenge, my dear sisters and brothers, the many who are listening to me all over Asia, Pacific, and also from different parts of Europe, I have seen people from USA and Canada, is how do we ensure this civilization of love? How do we accept the challenge which Pope Leo XIV gives us in Magnifica Humanitas? How do we ensure that there is peace, there is justice, there is harmony, there is dialogue? We can do it only if we have the right attitude, if we assimilate encyclicals like Magnifica Humanitas, if we try to actualize it, to articulate it, and above all, if we take a stand for truth, for justice, for peace, for solidarity, and for ensuring that we are sisters and brothers created in the image and likeness of God, made with the dignity which nobody can take away from us, because God has created us to do good, to ensure the civilization of love in this world. Thank you very much, and God bless each one of you.
Thank you, Cedric. You nearly did 7 minutes. That's great news. Just one quick question. Obviously, you have touched on so many dimensions, which we will go through the rest of the webinar. And I invite people to think of questions to raise at the discussion. But just out of curiosity, when you had that Justice Sunday in India on Independence Day, how was it practiced? How was it received? What was the reaction from the church and other people? Certainly the church.
I wrote a strong article on it because most bishops, most parish priests ignore Justice Sunday. And for many years, till this time, the new chairman of Justice, Peace, Development, say the office of this Catholic Bishops' Conference of India, Peter Machado, the Archbishop of Bangalore, sent a strong circular. Just say, in the parish that I come from, nothing was said about Justice Sunday. Okay? But I went to a neighboring parish in the evening and celebrated the Justice Sunday Mass the liturgy, and so on. So I think there's I've written a lot about it. Radio Veritas from the Philippines has published an article a couple of days ago about me taking on the church in India to be able to ensure that justice is mainstreamed. But I think it's a mixed bag of reactions. I suggested to the Justice, Peace and Development Office of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of India to ensure that people observe this day and to have a survey to find out how many literally paid attention to it, had some homilies or special liturgy, had some justice-oriented program, and how many have begun a process of moving towards justice, or how many said, okay, let's forget it, let's not rock the boat.
Thanks for the Cedric. Thank you. We now move to Sister Dr. Susan Connolly, who will speak on the leadership of women in shaping a civilization of love. Sister Susan, a member of the Sisters of St. Joseph, and holding a leadership position now in her Josephite congregation, worked in a Mary MacKillop program assisting the people of Timor-Leste. He uses writing, talks, and periodic emails to advocate for justice. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Caesar, and it's great to be here, and congratulations to you all. And it's lovely to know that there's people out there that I know and people out there that I don't know. So here we are, and I'm talking tonight and about the women, leadership of women in shaping a civilization of love. And we know that Pope Leo's encyclical Magnifica Humanitas is a challenge concerning a particular invention of humanity, artificial intelligence. Now, AI is extraordinary, but it is hardly magnificent. It is artificial. Something artificial is an imitation, even a sham. How would you feel if you were described as artificial? The Pope's call to us as humans to claim our magnificence is a fundamental tool in using AI as it should be used. Pope Leo talks of the civilization of love, but AI cannot love. The rapid and extraordinary developments in AI change its influence within months, even weeks. But would AI ever choose to be vanquished or destroyed for the sake of the good of others? Humans have done that. Jesus Christ did that. God did that. However, despite our human ability to love, it is sad that at this very time, in very many places across the world, half of humanity, women, can be systematically treated as though they were of less intelligence, less ability, and less worth than the other half of humanity, men. Women do at least 66% of the world's work, yet are poorer, less protected, and have greater food and water insecurity than men do. Even in Australia, many women are still paid less than men for doing equal work. Now, to be fair, far too many women accept their underling status as normal. Some play on it, manipulate it, and benefit from it. I believe proper participation of women as equal is essential if we humans are to grow a fully human backbone. Women's voices are essential. Mary's song, the Magnificat, teaches us, in Pope Leo's words, he says, to look at the world from a lower position, through the eyes of those who suffer rather than the mighty, to view history through the eyes of the little ones rather than the powerful, to interpret the events of history from the viewpoint of the widow, the orphan, the stranger, the wounded child, the exile, and the fugitive. It is not only women who can rise to these heights, of course, men can and do. But the age-old perspective of women is essential to focus the shared human eye on these truths. Happily, there is worldwide, if gradual, transformation of some societies. In the Asia-Pacific region, there is recognisable growth in women's leadership. For example, while women in Timor-Leste still face many ongoing social challenges, they are playing many more vital roles than ever before. Timorese women hold over 35% of parliamentary seats, one of the highest rates of female political representation in the Asia-Pacific region. This is a major advance in such a young nation with such a difficult history. The sharp edges of politics need the gifts that women can bring. Nevertheless, in another place very close to Australia, a woman recently said, with anger in her eyes, "If the Indonesians want to have our gold from our mountains, why did they treat us like animals?" That woman is in one of the trouble spots of our world, West Papua. The problem of the West Papuans is very, very deep indeed, because it is hidden. Foreign journalists are prevented from entering West Papua. Could I repeat that so it can sink in? Foreign journalists are prevented from entering West Papua. Yet the lights of the northern Australian city of Cairns are visible from Merauke in West Papua. If we are to recognise humanity everywhere, we need to challenge the fact that the natural resources of Papua, so very, very rich, are treated as infinitely more important than Papuan people. The civilization of love that Pope Leo speaks about has not yet arrived, obviously. We are still in the grasp of some of the beliefs that have held humanity captive for millennia. Many stories and legends from the past illustrate different cultures projecting their deepest anxieties onto the female of the species. We think of Pandora, who opened the box that contained all the evils of the world, or Eve, who listened to the serpent, and we know what happened then. Whilst heroines in the past and present can and are celebrated, it is extraordinary today that about 80% of canonised saints are men and the remaining 20% are women. Language illustrates this sense of inequality. Which is more negative, a spinster or a bachelor? Irrational or hysterical? The boss or bossy? Master or mistress? Love and its possible civilization does not have its full status here yet. Leo presents a vision of the civilization of love as he calls on us to disarm our words. And I was so grateful that Cedric used that same wonderful phrase. We have multitudes of opportunities to disarm our words. We can look at the words we use in the liturgy and be more inclusive of women. On social media, we can take up Pope Leo's suggestions, such as speak the truth, offer wise advice, support those in need of comfort, denounce injustice, and give a voice to the voiceless. Artificial intelligence can never do that unless we make it do so. And we means all of us. Every single one, every man and every woman. AI is shaping up to rival humanity. Perhaps this rivalry will be a catalyst for men and women to embrace true mutuality, to rejoice in difference and join together as one. We are not artificial. Together, we can put AI in its place, the place of a dutiful servant to the truly magnificent humanity.
Thank you, Susan. Well done, 7 minutes. you raised some very interesting issues for us to consider, but your description of the discrimination and disadvantage women in West Papua feel, painful as it is repeated in other parts of Asia Pacific. And clearly we go back to the same root cause or situation, which is the embedding of patriarchy in society. And that shows itself in different ways. We can talk about this a bit later, but if you have any further comment on this.
No, actually, but when I was preparing this, and you know, Caesar, 7 minutes is very short. But however, that's fine. It's good because we want to hear people. But really, I would have loved to have done a something on women as the world's scapegoats. Anyway, we'll leave that for another time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. We now move to Reverend James Bhagwan, who will explore interpreting Pope Leo's civilization of love through a Pacific lens. And what a big lens that is. James, a Methodist, is General Secretary of the Pacific Conference of Churches, and he's based in Suva, Fiji. Descending from Indian laborers brought by the British to Fiji, has shaped his commitment to social justice. Serving 35 member churches and 11 national councils of churches, spanning 20 Pacific Island communities and territories, is concerned about coastal protection, climate, and gender issues. Thanks, James.
Thank you, Caesar. And good evening from Fiji. It's Monday night here, but it's a pleasure to join with you. And as Caesar has done, I acknowledge the indigenous custodians and guardians of the various communities that we come from, those who have shaped and guided the knowledge, the wisdom that we hold today and continue to stand for the protection of their communities. I speak from Oceania, where we still have communities and territories that are occupied under colonial rule, and I would like to thank our sister for referring to West Papua, which is one of those territories. But here in Oceania, we are described often as small islands scattered across a vast sea. But from within, we know ourselves different because we see ourselves as a vast blue continent, peoples who are held together by ocean, ancestry, faith, memory, and responsibility. And Asia Pacific, this phrase or term Asia Pacific, once widened that belonging. Yet in the current geopolitics, even Asia Pacific has become obsolete. We're now placed inside the Indo-Pacific, a phrase that sounds geographic but increasingly carries strategic and military imagination. Our region has become a security theater, a source of minerals, labor, and data, where powers compete. And again, language is spoken about us rather than with us. And this is where Magnifica Humanitas speaks to us. Pope Leo XIV describes a culture of power in which those with resources and the capacity to dominate set the agenda, while the common good and people's sufferings are pushed aside. And we know this culture of power. We know it when communities who are least responsible for the climate crisis face rising seas, stronger storms, and displacement, while climate finance remains somewhere over the horizon. When an ocean that is wounded by nuclear testing and militarization is again treated as a chessboard, and in the continuing extraction of forests, rivers, seabed, labor, and now even our data. The form may change, but the logic remains. Those with power decide what has value, who may speak, and whose suffering is an acceptable cost of so-called progress. Artificial intelligence shapes commerce and communication. It is entering the rising militarization of the Indo-Pacific geopolitics. The AUKUS Pillar 2 explicitly develops AI and autonomous systems for military use, while the Quad Cooperation brings the maritime domain awareness and critical technologies into regional security architecture. And Pope Leo warns that AI can lower the threshold for force, distance human beings from responsibility, reduce the enemy to a statistic and the victim to collateral damage. And that warning is already being seen in our ocean. But perhaps AI might speak of something else. And by this I mean using the letters AI to refer to ancestral or ancient intelligence, indigenous and traditional knowledge carried through generations, learned by reading winds, currents, seasons, soils, plants, and relationships, recognizing the integral and sacred relationship between human beings and the biodiversity in which they exist. Wisdom tested by keeping communities and ecosystems alive. And I'm not romanticizing every tradition. Each must be tested by whether it protects dignity and life. But this knowledge is praxis, philosophy, and spirituality lived through planting, fishing, navigating, sharing, healing, conserving, and deciding together. It teaches us to observe, adapt, and act within relationship, and that is resilience. At the same time, the encyclical asks us to weigh AI's ecological footprint alongside its use. AI consumes enormous energy and water, and behind it are data centers, carbon emissions, and pressure on natural resources. Nothing digital is truly immaterial. So what can we ask AI to do? But also, what does it consume? Whose land, water, and labor make it possible, and who carries the cost? So what does a civilization of love offer? Pope Leo is clear that this is no naive utopia, and that's important to note. Love must become structures of justice. Fraternity must take institutional form. Our imposed interdependence must become a chosen solidarity. And that recognizes with our Pacific Conference of Churches understanding of this ocean of peace that has been declared in the Pacific region. For us, an ocean of peace is a region that is decolonized, demilitarized, denuclearized, and decarbonized. It calls us to listen to the wounded, restrain the powerful, disarm words and weapons, and measure development by the well-being of people and creation. And so the church also must examine itself. We cannot condemn a culture of power while reproducing hierarchy, patriarchy, and exclusion. The civilization of love is revealed by those who sit at the table, who is protected, and also how resources are shared. Near the end of the encyclical, as we have heard, Mary's Magnificat teaches us to see history from below, through the eyes of those who suffer, and to recognize that God is already at work, lifting the lowly and opening another future. So we do not end in fear, we choose hope, we choose love, love that protects life, turns power into service, honors ancestral wisdom, and weaves new knowledge into a shared future where no one is expendable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James. You've made a very strong presentation in terms of how the Pacific exists and what exists in the Pacific in terms of the different dimensions or the Pacific you highlighted. We can talk about this a bit later, but we deliberately chose Asia Pacific for this webinar and not Indo Pacific. Because as you say, Indo Pacific for us and for me and for us and others, it communicates geopolitics and geopolitical interests, whereas Asia Pacific communicates people. And this encyclical is about people and what they experience and the challenges they face. You also raised the question about the church having to be honest in terms of how it progresses. We cannot condemn what we consider unjust and all of that on the other side of the fence when we are ourselves not exactly innocent of that. And I just want to end on this. When Father Cedric spoke of Justice Sunday in India, and it was poorly supported, that tells us that the church has a long way to go. Do you have any thoughts on that briefly?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this continues to be a challenge for us to remind ourselves of our interconnectedness. And it's funny, well, it's not funny, but it's interesting to note that the more we are connected by technology, the more insular we tend to become and live in our own echo chambers. Here in the Pacific, we have something similar where we have a series of Freedom Sundays. Freedom Sunday for Kanaki and Mauhinui is celebrated on the Sunday before Bastille Day, which is July the 14th. And so those territories that are occupied by France remember their own struggle, and we in the Pacific remember their struggle the Sunday before France celebrates its Revolution Day. The 1st of December in the Pacific is always known as the Morning Star Day, where we reflect on West Papua. The Sunday before the Treaty of Waitangi is commemorated as a public holiday, is Te Tiriti Sunday for our member churches. And so we have these opportunities to continue to remember, but I think we need to figure out how do we bring this into the mainstream of the conversation in the work that we are called to do. How do we bring this into a regular discourse in our church communities? Thank you.
Thank you, James. Okay, friends, we've had a rich fare of insights, brief though they may be, but still pointed. Time for your questions. So please, the three dots at the bottom of your screen, click on it and it opens up Q&A. Hope to see your questions to the panel. I just see if there are any questions just come up. There's a question. It says, the encyclical says that the digital world is a new continent to be evangelized. Can you comment how this can be done? What can the churches do together with other faith traditions so that the purpose of AI is to service the human good and human dignity? I'll leave that to the panel now to grapple with this.
Thank you, Caesar. Maybe I'll just give it a shot to get things going. Because I saw that come up while the other presenters were talking, so I had a bit of time to reflect on that. I must admit that for us in Oceania, the phrase "a new continent to be evangelized" gives us some pause, because the question is new to who has declared it empty, and who is preparing to claim it. This, of course, is always a challenge for us when we are still going through that journey of self-determination. We know terra nullius, the fiction that the land belonged to no one, and now mare nullius, where the ocean is treated as an empty space available for exploitation, particularly with deep sea mining. But perhaps now we can face the cyber nullius, the empty digital frontier, together with the concept of data nullius, where our language, stories, identities, and indigenous knowledge are treated as belonging to no one, where, making it free to be extracted and monetized. But the point I think that we get from this text is that the digital world is inhabited. People are there. Our young and and our children are there, and our hopes and our wounds are there. And so evangelization isn't just about putting another flag or simply filling the internet with religious content. It means bringing the way of Christ, the way of love, truth, justice, compassion, and peace into how technology is designed, governed, and used. And Pope Leo says, let's invest in education beginning with ourselves. And so before perhaps we as churches tell the world how to use AI, we need to understand it. Together with other faith traditions, we can create spaces of deep conversation that doesn't happen in the AI space or even the digital space. In the Pacific, we call it talanoa. In the Catholic Jesuit tradition, we talk about spiritual conversation that involves young people, elders, indigenous knowledge holders, those who are experienced in technology and affected communities. The difference is AI produces very quickly, it moves fast, but wisdom needs time. And so, whether it's a spiritual conversation or a talanoa, these help us listen beneath the words. It also helps us recognize who hasn't spoken and discern what leads towards life. That's just a little reflection that I had while this was going on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yep, Susan.
Yes, I'd like to just come in there on something James said. It's about the speed, which is one of the great things that I think us older people, I don't know about you, James, but I know the speed of it. I'm thinking, why can't it just be like it was, Whereas for our young people, that's not such a huge thing at all. I mean, humanity has dealt with huge changes in the ways we communicate. And it's the speed of this one which is terrible. But I still think that humanity will be able to do it so long as we use our young people. Invitations to the young people. I see them on there. They've got it all together. They can teach me so much. And I just think we think we're losing the young sometimes. I don't think we are. I think it's just that they need to be given opportunities to help us along to live in this world the way it is and the way it is going to continue to change at this rate.
Yep. Let's move on to some of the questions so that we can get on a few more. What strategies as church and members of God's family can be proactively used to counter newer forms of colonialism, to build a civilization of love?
Okay, could I come in here at this stage? See, Pope Leo is speaking about a neo-colonialism that is taking place in the context of artificial intelligence. The way wars are fought, the way, say, drones are used, the way, say, those schoolgirls have been killed in Iran, and so on. You're desensitizing yourself, but yet you're taking over, you're controlling, you have the power. And we have to pay attention to three important things. Right at the beginning, he says that he asks for apologies. He says the church has not apologized sufficiently for the type of colonialism that took place in the past with the Christian nations. They have gone and invaded people. They have destroyed the identity, the cultures of the people of the First Nation, the indigenous, the Native Americans, the Adivasis here, the tribals. Colonialism has destroyed the identity, the cultures of the local people. And the church was, in a way, quite responsible, or Christianity, for a lot of this. There are other forms and other nations of colonialism with other religions and so on. We know that. So he's apologizing. Secondly, right at the beginning, when he speaks about the fundamentals of Catholic social doctrine and of the principles, he speaks about, say, the three fundamentals are very clear, that every human being is created in the image and likeness of God. It is endowed, the person is endowed with human dignity, and the inviolability, the non-negotiability of human rights. And this is very important. And he gets into the five principles when he speaks about the common good, the universal destination of goods, subsidiarity, solidarity, and social justice. Now he says the church cannot abdicate, Christianity cannot abdicate it and say, I have no responsibility. There is a colonialism taking place. There is the culture of power taking place. How do we mainstream? How do we create ownership of the common good, the universal destination of goods, subsidiarity, solidarity, and social justice? So this has to be used, has to be internalized, it has to be actualized, it has to be used as a strategy to, in a way, to address the neo-colonialism that is invading our lives, our privacy, our homes, our commonalities, our sense of being, and we have to be in this together. But for this, we have to fear no one. We have to be visible and vocal and to stand up for truth, for justice, and of peace, both individually and collectively, institutionally, as the church, in the Asia-Pacific zone and in all parts of the world.
I would like to connect this again with culture of power. Cedric, I read recently that the Indian powers that be, the tech billionaires and others, they're very cold towards this encyclical. They believe, I'm told, that it does not apply to us, that this is old-fashioned, and we have to, go on the path of efficiency, control, and all of that. It's culture of power, obviously.
Yes.
Does the church in India have the courage to question that?
I really do not know. And I feel the church is very wary, because even in terms of Magnifica Humanitas, the church as a collective body has not come out together. There is plenty of tokenism, plenty of cosmetic activity, but that does not position us as a representative of several million people, of the country's total population, in which we have contributed immensely to education, to Medicare, to the empowerment of people, the tribals and so on, to agricultural development. The church has contributed immensely for years, for centuries. And now, why are we wary? Why are we frightened? Why are we not able to become more visible, more vocal in taking a stand for this neo-colonialism, this artificial intelligence that is destroying perhaps our identity, our humanness, our sense of being? We are losing. In fact, I'm sorry to say this, but the other day on Independence Day, the Prime Minister referred to people, those who are thinking, those who are critical, those who are creative, as what they call Dimagi Naxalites, those who are unpatriotic, who are thinking. So we are not allowed even to think in India today. And there are some editorials written about it, a lot of it on social media, to say we are told not only to stop voicing opinion, to have a dissenting voice, but we are told even to stop thinking because we are becoming, like in the Industrial Revolution, only pawns in this big machine of the artificial intelligence.
Thank you. Thank you. I see another question. Is it ever going to be possible that the church could lead the way in terms of encouraging equality between men and women, between clerics and ordinary people? Where do we start?
Start with Sister Susan.
Where do we start indeed?
See, we are 3 against 1, Sister
Wouldn't
Susan.
you think it was just basic? Wouldn't you think it was just basic that people at this day and age could see that we are different, but we are equal? But there's too much, I don't know, there's too much going on. Look, do you mind if I just go back to what Cedric was saying? It's not on this topic at all, but it just came to me about the difficulties that churches and religions have in speaking out because of the political implications. And if you've got political implications, oftentimes there are monetary implications, because if you speak out too much about the, what's going on or what a government is doing, you could get your tax deductibility taken. And what came to me was what happened in Timor in 1980, when the sisters there, the Carmelite sisters, smuggled a letter out. And the letter said something like this: the heaviest blow for us has been the silence of the universal church. Now, isn't that a real indictment? And, it happens now, but like, this is the people thing. It's people that are going to change it. It's not the institutions, but of course institutions are run by people. Look, we go round and round, don't we? Oh my goodness, I don't know. But I just think everybody watching this thing, well, I'm going to put a bid in for West Papua now. If every person watching this told at least one other person that foreign journalists weren't allowed into West Papua, what education that would be. That'd be 500 people who know that. That is a shocking indictment of what's happening today to those people. Their story cannot be told because our media is too frightened to go in or to do anything about it.
Going back, very good points, Susan, but going back to the question of patriarchy, Pope Leo has not mentioned patriarchy by name, but there is a paragraph which points to that indirectly, or it says living out justice in the church means purifying ecclesial relationships and structures from distortions that give rise to inequality, lack of transparency, and abuse of power. In this regard, listening to the victims of spiritual, economic, institutional, sexual, and power-based abuse, as well as abuses of conscience, is an integral part of a journey toward justice, which includes acknowledging the harm done, just reparation, and taking steps to prevent it from happening again. I am still focused on that issue because when you look at the extent of suffering women have been through history and today, in every which way, whether it be in the church or in government or in society, etc., that something like this is something we have to pay attention to. I mean, we can't just let the disadvantage to women continue. Now, this might be sounding like pie in the sky, but what women are suffering is not pie in the sky. That's reality. And maybe we have got narcotized to see this as normal and not be challenged by it. That's my fear, and that's my hope that something might happen. I don't know if you want to add anything to this.
Just as you were saying, speaking there about women there, that I just thought to myself, like in Western Australia, Western society, Western, like Australia, for instance, what was it like, say, even 50 years ago? Like, I think it is better. Like, we have improved, at least in the sense that the issue is raised, whereas women were,
We have lost you.
second-class citizens. I mean, that is an advance.
Okay.
Oh, have you?
We have lost you for
I
some
did.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
We just move on.
Wasn't me.
Hopefully it'll come back.
Well, it should be right now, isn't that right?
Okay, it's okay now.
I didn't touch anything, yes. No, I just said that, like, I'd say 50 years ago, the position of women in Australia was worse. So I just think there is an advance. I don't think it's all bad, if you know what I mean. It's pretty bad, but it's not all bad.
Let's see another one. Can you give some practical steps to humanize AI? James, give it a try.
This is the challenge. I had a conversation with my daughter late one night. She was very concerned about the use of AI and its ecological footprint and impact. And that alone was the first sort of issue for us. Do we use AI noting its ecological impact and what it takes in terms of water and power and all of those sorts of things? But how do you humanize something like that? We have to remember that at the end of it, people, this is designed by human beings. They're human beings that input into it, and that's part of the process. And the end users also can be, although sometimes they're trying to move us out of that space, human beings as well. What are the things that we bring to it? What are the questions, and particularly what are the spaces that we bring this to? Susan referred to that, one of the things that I said about how this is so fast, and we need to bring time and reflection back into that. Perhaps we can look at it as a very expensive tool, not just in terms of subscription costs, but in terms of its impact on the environment. But during Lent, during the Easter weekend, particularly, I was sitting at home after our Good Friday services. I tried to have a conversation with it to see if it would evangelize or try and have a spiritual discussion. And it's very interesting, the responses one gets. But I think at the end of the day, we need to remind ourselves that at the beginning and at the end of this process are human beings. And it's how we engage in it, how we apply our own critical thinking and questions rather than just accepting what is given. That is one way in which we can engage with it. I don't know if we can humanize it, but I know we can engage as human beings with it and how we respond to it as human beings. Thank you.
When I look at the emergence of the data centers all around the world, wherever people are talking about data centers, the majority are not in favor of that. In Australia, for instance, there's a strong feeling that we should not have data centers given the amount of energy, land, water, etc., that they will exploit and use. And yet our government in Australia is going, full march on continuing to want them, and we're going to educate the Australian community as to the benefit of data centers. In other words, the powerful decide what's good for us. And maybe in the end, they will impose the data centers on our towns and cities at the expense that we know will materialize. So again, it's the culture of power at play. I'll get one more question. And
Yes, but could I just come there, Caesar? You
Sure.
said at the beginning that some people, people didn't want to have data centers. Well, like, are they willing to give up the use of, the AI? I mean, it's like having, just so long as we have all the benefits, so long as it's not on our backyard.
Yeah.
That's an element of it as well. And that's
Yeah.
a sort of a Western mentality. So long as somebody's supplying it, so long as we get the benefit, doesn't matter where it is. But I mean, you know what I mean? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We often tell women to find their voice and rise above their circumstances. But what happens when the structures around them have been taken away, their voice and power in the first place? So this is a recurring theme back to patriarchy and the disadvantage of women. What?
See,
Yes.
this is definitely the recurring theme of patriarchy, which is existing in so many societies and very strong here. Here we have Pope Francis spoken very strongly against clericalism. Okay. Yeah, as you have said earlier, even in Magnifica Humanitas, Pope Leo is speaking about there is what we call a dominant culture, the culture of power. And if we talk about patriarchy that is existing in most Indian societies here in India today, it's so strong. And patriarchy is so linked with both hierarchy and with clericalism. And Pope Francis has called clericalism, he has said, is eating us up. That power we wield just because we are in the positions of authority can tell people that they can be damned, that they can be condemned. So how do we create, as we say so often, a more equitable society where relations are harmonious with the other genders, the LGBTQIA plus community, with the women? How do we ensure that I've just written an article for our National Religious Monthly called The Magnet. I have a column there, Faith That Does Justice. And I've written about the girl child. It's a column which I have. It'll be out in the September issue, in keeping with the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And I've said, even good sisters, religious sisters, if somebody has two girls in the family, the first question they will ask is, you don't have any boys. It comes out so spontaneously. Here in many of our societies in India, when a child is born, if it's a male, they distributed a sweet, a mithai that is made in milk. When a girl is born, if they have to give a sweet to celebrate the birth of the girl child, they'll give a sweet that is cooked in oil. Now, this is blatant discrimination from the time of birth. How a girl child is not wanted, how abortions of the girl child takes place. So it becomes systemic. And how do we address this? Promoting even other genders, the women, even in our parish councils, in the way we talk of being church. In that first synodal report, there were very powerful passages about the role of women. In the final report, these passages have been omitted. And I think we need to have a serious look into this and to what is happening, say, in countries like India, where hierarchy, clericalism, and patriarchy literally rule the roost.
Let's see. Greetings, Sister Susan. You mentioned that AI may be shaping up to rival humanity, and that women might help put AI in its proper place. If the humanity Pope Leo envisions through Magnifica is still far from our present reality, could women's participation mean not only equal access to development and technology, but also helping to define what kind of development in AI truly serves humanity? Something not necessarily as inherently destructive, but whose life-giving role from the church life, must still be discerned.
Yes, isn't that a fine comment about what could be possible and what real cooperation with women's gifts and the real investment of women themselves in the future of the world could be? There is a great deal of discernment and development that needs to go there, but I was just thinking as I was reading that how far women's education has come. Look, I don't want to seem to be like some sort of a Pollyanna, but we can get overcome with the devastations that are around us, and they are. I was listening to you, Cedric, and I thought to myself, oh my goodness me. But the fact that we can talk about them now, like far more people know that this is going on. So that itself is an advance. And I do think the more women are educated, the better it will be. I was only just reminded the other day we were talking about Mary MacKillop, St. Mary MacKillop, and the wonderful program of education she had. Now, she was a woman of her times. She believed in education, but it was set out what the boys would do, and the girls would be doing the sewing, and the boys would be, and it was of its time. It wouldn't pass muster now. So we've advanced and women are advanced, and I just hope and pray that it's, more and more. So thanks to whoever wrote that. It was beautiful.
Yep. I would like to introduce at this point this discussion about how the encyclical and similar messages from Pope Leo were just rejected by the powerful. I refer to, for example, to President Trump saying that when Pope Leo talks about politics, he does not know what he's talking about. And his Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that politics is our sphere and Pope Leo can stay within theology. So which raises the question that what is envisaged in this question is, what right does the church have to comment and intervene in public life in all its dimensions, culture, politics, war, and all those issues? There's still this mentality that is an area of concern that doesn't concern the church at all. And yet we believe the church has a role to play. So this tension is something that we are facing. How do we go beyond it? How do we educate those who believe the church has no voice in these things. We have lost you, Cedric.
Unmute myself. Okay.
Oh.
I'm not sure whether there should be any tension or whether there should be a debate or discussion. Let's look at the Old Testament. Let's look at the people going into the so-called promised land. You know, that liberative process for freedom. Let's look at what David was doing when he slew Goliath. Let's look at what the prophets are saying, the prophet Isaiah and so on. So they are talking about the human reality and how do we ensure the kingdom of God here on earth. Why do we play down the Magnificat, which is a prayer of protest? He has put down the powerful from their thrones and exalted the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent away the rich empty. How do we translate this in today's idiom? What did Jesus do when he took a stand against the Herods and Pilates, the scribes and Pharisees, of his time? He was hitting out at a system which was brutal, unjust, which did not have the listening heart to respond to the cries of the people. Why does he have to give us that last judgment? Why does he have to take sides? Say, when he gives us the Nazareth declaration, or when he says, he has sent me to give good news to the poor, to tell prisoners that they are prisoners no more, to let the blind people to ensure that they can see, and set the downtrodden free. There is scripture. And Pope Francis in Fratelli Tutti says the church has to be involved, engaged. Politics is a good word. It comes from polis. It belongs to the people. There is nothing bad. About political parties, that's another thing. But taking a stand for truth, for justice, for the civilization of love, for dialogue, for harmony, for peace, that is a non-negotiable duty. It's a right and of the church. And my problem is that the church in countries like India have not done enough to be visible and vocal in this sphere. We have towed the line and we have allowed people to continue to be brutalized, dehumanized, in so many different ways.
There's a comment. Brilliant presentation, James, from a Fijian. Would you say that Pope Leo is an AI enthusiast?
I don't know. I'm the Protestant amongst all the Catholics. No, I think I would say that there is a recognition that AI is here. And I mean, already there's been some engagement with the church on various forms of AI, particularly Claude by Anthropic, because Anthropic has stated very clearly that they won't allow its AI programs to be used for military purposes. So, and it goes to another question I think that comes up a bit later on, is about the use of AI on addressing issues of climate change. We already, to a certain extent, have been using this technology in non-commercial spaces, I would say, or spaces that are not open to the general public. we use artificial intelligence to model weather, to create scenarios for us to respond to certain things. And so, it is something we need to really be thinking about. In what areas do we use artificial intelligence already? How is it already being slowly mainstreamed in our lives? Those of us who have a smartphone or a smart TV, already that's artificial intelligence embedded in that. Sometimes, you will notice that your phone hears you as you are talking and starts responding to your conversation. This is already in place at the moment. So I would say that there is a understanding that AI is here, and the question is and this is the sort of the conundrum that we face ourselves in. If we don't use AI, or we don't involve ourselves in this space on AI because of ethical reasons, then the unethical and unscrupulous will make a lot of use of it. Now, I don't like that, even that sort of understanding, because it's about who's using. If they've got a gun, we should have a gun kind of concept. But I do think that just as we in the faith communities engaged in social media when it came out, when we first started moving into that digital, online, virtual world. And in many spaces, we have allowed alternative voices to be heard. I think this is something we still need to grapple with. We cannot just say no and shut the door and close our eyes to it. We need to pay attention. And I think at the end of the day, we have to remember that AI is a creation of human beings. And there's one of the questions talks about the possibility of renaming AI into something else, because it is people who are behind all of this, as much as the programming takes charge. But at the end of that behind all of these things, and in particular today, are corporations which are owned by people. And we need to think about that. So just as we've talked about, I think it was Cedric who mentioned the military-industrial complex, the term industrial complex needs to be applied to many spaces in this day and age. It's not just the military industrial complex. It is even the climate industrial complex. When you look at all the people who make business out of climate change and COP meetings, and so on and so forth, wherever corporate capture is happening, we need to pay attention, because that is the new form of colonization and enslavement to which we need to be speaking justice and liberation. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another comment about you, but you don't need to respond. This person is quite impressed by the awareness shown by Reverend Bhagwan in regards to the church. I suppose this person means the Catholic Church. Can you comment on the connection between the encyclical Rerum Novarum and the Magnifica Humanitas? The value and place of work for people is seen as crucial, as central in one's life. Do you think that AI will reduce paid work and free people up to be more active in their communities and work for peace and justice?
Well, that'd be a wonderful thing, I'm sure, but still in all, people need to be paid. How are they going to be paid? I mean, people have to have jobs. Things are going to change dramatically, I think, in a short space of time. I really don't know what it's going to be. I can't even think of what it might be. But I am convinced that human beings, good human beings, and they far outnumber bad ones, will come up with some solutions. I know that sounds Pollyanna-ish, but humanity has managed that so far. Why should we fail now? Especially when we've got the gospel to guide us.
maybe this question refers to what Elon Musk has declared a few days ago, saying that the robots and others of that type will be so widespread and they will do so much of the work that needs to be done by humans that there will not be any more need for money. This is the words from his mouth.
And that's from the mouth of a trillionaire, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, let's see.
The latest news is that a Chinese robot has outrun Usain Bolt in the 100 meters world record. So now, for example, we are talking about almost any that humaneness can be nullified, can be negated. They will decide. They say they're going to put some chip in our. So even what we think will be mined. The data will be mined. So it's not only what we say, what we write, what is there in the electronic media, even our mental processes can be ultimately mined. And this is serious. One thing is we need tools. No one is talking about or denigrating, neither is Pope Leo in Magnifica Humanitas, of the need and importance of the instrument. Like in the Industrial Revolution, the rerum, what happened with the machines, and what Pope Leo XIII was speaking about, of all things new. He did not want the human being to be a mere cog in the machine. What is the thinking put in? What are the creative processes? What are the critical processes? How do we allow the fact that every human being is created in the image and likeness of God, has dignity, and needs to have control and use these machines, these tools judiciously, with a sense of caution, and in terms of what he says, the common good, the universal destination of goods. He's not saying just negate it, just throw it out, into the garbage can. He's not saying it. He says use it wisely, and as long as it is. It's like the screen. There is a big debate even in India. I know it's happened in Australia about at what age should children start using smartphones, because addictions, we know, set in very easily. There were different types of addictions with drugs and alcohol and so on. And now with these gizmos, with these smartphones, with the fact that you can do anything and everything with ChatGPT, with Gemini, with Claude, and all these things, they're literally doing the thinking for yourselves. You're no longer writing a thesis. You're no longer referencing a book. You're no longer taking the pains to read things from cover to cover. It's all shortcuts. It's all like these 2 minutes noodles that we have in India. It's no longer about that laborious way that a traditional Indian woman cooked the meals in the past. So things are changing. Maybe we cannot stop it, but how do we create the checks and balances, the cautions to address issues which are systemic, which are threatening to destroy that humanity which is in every human being?
Thank you. We'll have this as the last question, and I hope all of you, the panel, will answer this one. Leo's church refuses women any role as priest, deacon, or even to give homilies is his letter hypocritical? this is a question for all of you.
Mm. Well, I don't mind coming in first. I don't think his letter is hypocritical. His letter has made advances regarding, like, for instance, he does not use the word man as some, he uses men and women, you know, I mean, you might think that's paltry, but still it is an advance. But of course, the whole question of women's ordination in the church is just, well, in my opinion, it's beyond ridiculous, really, that women can't be, you know, really. And it's one of those big things. It is the huge monolith of male domination in the Catholic Church. And I am convinced that it will change. Not in my lifetime, but I am convinced it will change. There is absolutely no reason why a woman cannot do what a priest does. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever.
I saw
My
you
thing is
shaking
very
your head.
clear. I agree with Sister Susan. I mean, we are not decision makers on this, but I don't see any reason why, very clearly, it may not be also in my lifetime, but it will happen. A lot of other Christian denominations do have ordained priests. We have the head of the Church of England today, of the Anglican Church, a woman. And I am hopeful that things will change. But the point is about these homilies and so on. So the point is, let the Mass get over and tell the priest, don't give the homily during Mass. And after the last blessing, call the woman up and let her preach to thee. That is not banned anywhere. I do it.
I wonder, James, what do you think about this from the perspective of your church, where women seem to have a better place in terms of ordination and aspects like that?
Yeah, look, yeah, this is when the comment about my knowledge of the church may not be quite correct. But I come from the Methodist tradition. I work in an ecumenical space. My wife is Catholic. And my children are Anglican. That will just confuse everybody. But that's to confound AI, I think, more than anything else. But I think in our traditions, we have the space for the ordination of women. We have a very strong focus on laity, and I would like to say that we can see movement from where we look. I mean, the whole process of synodality shows that actually the biggest barrier to change is culture and what has been ingrained. And by culture, I'm not referring to indigenous culture. I'm talking about what we practice for so long that we that becomes the markers of our society. Because we still have places in the Pacific where, although the denomination can ordain women, the culture does not allow the ordination of women. They hold to that difference. And so I think this is the thing that we need to keep in mind, that we're not just talking about theology, we're not just talking about doctrine, we're actually talking about society, we're talking about cultures of communities. And I would also say that in some spaces, and I'm not prescribing this to the Catholic Church, but in others, in many spaces in the world, in faith, in culture, in society, when we talk of patriarchy, actually it is misogyny disguised as patriarchy. And I want to be very, very clear on how I see that in many spaces where we talk about, oh yes, we make space for women, or we do that, we do other. But really, we create those spaces to control and to hold people in that space. But we believe in the church that will grow in the fullness of time. And I think that is something that we can work towards, we can struggle towards, we can continue to speak out towards it. In the Pacific, we at PCC we have what's known as a gender status card, where we ask our churches some very tough questions about not just about the ordination of women, but how they address issues that affect women. Even the conversation about sexual reproductive health is an issue for women and an issue for the church because we're talking about life and well-being. And so I think there's so many areas in this space that we need to pay attention to. But we need to keep the pressure on. We need to keep praying for it, and we need to keep talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think we can end on this note with a vision of a family, Methodists, Catholic, Anglicans all together under the one roof. It's a very nice vision. So I think we've had quite a good airing. Obviously, in a forum like this, you don't expect solutions to fall, given the nature of what we're discussing. But at least the encyclical of Pope Leo has given us an opportunity to range over so many dimensions of the way we live, the way we pray, the way we relate. And that's what we have seen in this webinar. So now it's my turn to thank the panelists for taking the time to join us. Cedric, Susan, and James. I would also like to thank Pax Christi International and its office in Brussels, especially Alessia, for giving us the technical support. I also like to thank support from Pax Christi Asia Pacific, and I mentioned a few names there, Claude, Maggie, Gail, and Bridget. And to all of you who joined us from around the world, thank you for participating. Go and promote the civilization of love where you are. The world needs it desperately. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Caesar. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, James. Thank you, Alessio.
Bless you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much.
there's still some time for chat if people wanted to put some messages before they go.